It's that time once again, the time for the ultimate guide, this time to observers. I'll be showing you what an observer is, what an observer does, and why it's one of the most useful blocks in Minecraft, Bedrock or Java, either one of them. And I've got little things laid out like the other ultimate guides which you should watch, just to use as examples as to, you know, what I will be showing you today. First off, what an observer does. Pretty much, the observer, it has a little face here, and then if we come around the back and delete that, it has a little butthole there. And what happens is pretty much, if anything happens in front of its face, in the one block area in front of its face, it'll shit itself, but it'll shit a 1 tick pulse. And to give you an example, it'll turn that on and off, 1 tick, which is 1/10 of a second. If we do it again, another shit. And then what it can activate is pretty much anything redstone really. What happens is you have dust here, you have a piston, and you have a light. You've already seen the light. If we update this, there we go, there's 1 tick pulse. But it also happens, it's not just pistons, it can be literally everything. I'll put a link down in the description that pretty much tells you what it'll observe and use as a 1 tick pulse. So if you put a block there, boom, take it away, boom. Observers work in all directions, and whatever direction you put it in, it has a little arrow on the top and on the bottom, and the arrow points to the little hole on the back that has the output. So whatever direction the arrow is pointing, that's where the signal's going to come from. And then whatever the direction the arrow is pointing away from is the face of it, where the updates happen. So if we put a block there, it'll update. It can go vertically like that. It can go, perpendicular. No, not perpendicular. Perpendicular like that, to perpendicular to that one, by the way. And then it can go down like that as well. And these have a signal strength of 15, like most redstone things. I keep putting blocks down, and it's really annoying. So if we come around here, here's the 15th block. That's the 16th. So it's not going to power this. And this redstone line pretty much just pushes this piston block in front of the observer, updating it, just so you know. So it's not part of the observer. You don't need that. But when we flick the switch, we have a signal strength of 15. So that'll update like that, and that'll update like that. Now, for the more technical stuff. If you have a repeater, say the butthole is facing into the redstone like that, and then if you grab a repeater and set it to different types of ticks, it'll change the pulse length. So this redstone dust will have one tick. It'll go on and off in a 1/10 of a second. This will have maybe 1 tick, I'm not too sure, but this will have 2. This will have 3 ticks of pulse and 4 ticks. So this will go on for 4/10 of a second instead of just 1/10 of a second for a normal tick. And I'll show you right now. Ready? See, that kind of goes on stays out for a little longer. So I'll replace them all with lamps. If I go like this, they should all stay on for different lengths of time, and you should see it. Ready? See, these few are the most noticeable because Bedrock ticks are a bit slower than Java, but this is still noticeable, and these are pretty much exactly the same. Redstone torches also display the sort of 1 tick pulse. If we have one here, see, this one's on, this one's extended, and that's powered. So if we flick this on, we should update it all. This goes on and off really fast. This goes in and out really fast. As you can see, the torches turn on and off really fast. But then the lamps, because the lamps are sort of slower and turning off, I'm pretty sure, I think they take 2 ticks. They don't actually register the redstone torch here. So this won't go on and off. That'll just stay on, which is, it has some uses if we do that. See, doesn't turn on and off. observers can be movable, and you might not think that pushing an observer is very useful, but I find it's actually one of the most useful things in Redstone. It can do a lot. It's really versatile, this feature. So if we push it, that'll go on and off for a second. Then if we flick it off, that doesn't, because there's nothing in between here. If I do it again like that. You can also move them up and down, and this is what happens. If I flick it up, that one happens. If I flick it down, that one goes. Because technically moving it is moving it from that block to that block, and it's technically creating an update for blocks. So if we do it again, even if I have blocks here, it'll still do it. Ready? And then boom. And that is useful in a lot of flying machines, and I'll show you a flying machine later on in the video. I have, I think, 2 or 3 things, I can't remember, set up over there, just to, you know, give an example of how they're useful in very basic contraptions. So if we come around here, what's this again? Oh, this is for the clock. I forgot for a second. So if you put an observer with facing that way, the face facing that way, and then have another face facing into the same one, it creates a clock, because they keep updating itself. And so if we flick that down, that'll update, and that'll update, and that'll update, and so on until, and it doesn't burn out. So it's a pretty neat small clock, and it goes in and out like that. And that's used for a lot of, I don't know, dispenser traps, maybe. They also, if you have them both facing that way, it doesn't work. It'll update once if you flick the switch, but it won't create a clock, because both the outputs are going that way, and they're not kind of looking at each other, updating each other. Another neat thing about observers is that you can kind of chain them if they're all looking into each other. So you have this one licking this one's ass, and then this one licking this one's ass. They're all giving, it's a chain of rim jobs, and it'll eventually end up in this one shitting itself with a 1 tick pulse. To give you an example, it takes, you know, that takes a tick, and then that takes a tick, and then that takes a tick, and we've got 10 lined up here. So if I flick the switch, it'll update that one, and 1 second later this one will go, where in a redstone line it'll be instant. So this will go 1/10 of a second, then 9/10 of a second later this is going to go, and I'll show you that right now. If we do this, and then boom. It's a little slower, well actually it's a lot slower, but it does have very useful uses, I guess, in redstone builds. So if we do that, that'll happen. What is useful is if you have an observer sort of facing this way, you can put an observer facing into that one on any side. So if we update this will update, all of them will update, and even the back one. So if we place a block there, all of them go. If we remove it, all of them go. And moving on from that point is this one. If you sort of have it in like a snail like this, if we update this one down here, it's this one. If we update this one in here, this one will see it update, this one will see it and update that, this one will see it update and go into there. So you sort of have a signal going up, looping and around. If we place it here, that's going to happen, and if we place it there, that'll happen. And I've done this because both of these observers, as you can see, the arrows are pointing upwards, so they're looking at this block here. And as you saw, that went, and if we remove it, so if we place it here like this, nothing's going to happen, because it's sending a signal into this block, but because observers aren't full blocks, it doesn't update, so no signal will travel further than this block here. If we remove that, nothing happens. If we place one there, something happens, because it's in an L shape like that. So you kind of need to have an observer being updated, then one looking into that one, and then this one, if we come up here, see the arrows, this will be the face side, look into that one, and it'll travel through like that. And I'm just going to remove that. Next two examples is on how it sort of gives the signal. So the observer's facing into this block here, so it'll hard power it, which means anything connected to it should turn on and off, or have the pulse run through it. So if there's anything in there, there is. And if we give it a little update, all of it, see that spat out a block, they all kind of updated, and you didn't really see the redstone, so if I update it there, even the redstone goes. But what you can't do is, like a repeater, if you have something here, the repeater's powering this one, but it isn't powering that one because you can't get power from the side of it. See, for example, this one, it'll make that one go in and out, but this one isn't going to go because the arrow's not pointing to it. It can't get power from the side of it. If you had, so I'll show you first. That one goes, and then the other one doesn't go. If you had an observer like this, looking into that one and then connected to that, then it'll go, and it'll go a little slower because there's 1 tick of delay for every observer. But if you just had something there, nothing's going to happen. Last thing, before the 2 examples I've set out there, is sort of different ways it updates. So if we have a switch straight onto the face, and then this straight onto the face, it'll update both. So if you flick the switch, that'll turn on and off. And if we do it again, it'll just keep giving us the signal. But then if we press the button, that updates. But then when the button pushes out again, it also gives another update. So it kind of gives 2 updates. I think that button's 4 ticks or 8 ticks, I can't remember. But when you press the button in, it sends the pulse, and when it pops out again, it'll send the pulse again. It'll also be looking into a sticky piston, and when that goes, that'll also update, so you don't need it looking at the arm. It'll also update if it's looking straight into the piston body. And I've in the link in the description, it's to the MC, I think, Bedrock observers, or actually it's just observers in general, and it'll tell you what updates it and what doesn't. But to give you an example, it'll also, if there's a repeater turning on and off, it'll update all of these, even the repeater. See, the repeater's sitting on the face of this observer. This observer's looking at the repeater. It'll even update this one here. If we flick it on, they all go on and off, and then if we flick it off again, they all go on and off. But I think they all happen equally. This one actually goes a little faster or slower. I don't really know why. If anyone knows, please let me know. But they also happen. They also like update if you update the repeater like that. I didn't mean to flick that on. If you change the tick length of the repeater, they'll all update as well. Now for the examples, I've got 2 redstone builds here. It's a flying machine and it's a block swapper. I've done tutorials on both of them, so if you haven't, check them out. They're pretty useful. And actually, one last thing, if you get a flint of steel, that'll also update it. And if you light the face of it, if you just smack it there you go, it'll update. So an example here is, I'll show you the contraption. If we do this, if we flick it on and off, it updates, and the observer is actually looking at this line of redstone here and updating this piston to go in and out with the redstone block. So if I show you, that causes that piston to go down with the redstone block long enough for this piston to push its block into that place, and then when the redstone block goes back in, I think 2/10 of a second later, it'll push back up again, and you can have a nice neat floor like this, a block swapper. And the same goes for that. It goes in and out. This goes down for just enough time, allowing this piston to push its block into that place. And I'll show you once more, because I'm pretty proud about that. And yeah, so that's pretty cool. And watch the tutorial, because I have made a tutorial on that one. And so if we come along here, here's a flying machine. This is only a one-way flying machine, a very simple one, but pretty much whenever this moves that way, it'll update this piston to push that one. That'll move, updating that one to grab that, and so on. You'll see the chain. If I light this block here, smack it in the face, it'll just go like that. And this is another really useful thing for update for observers.